the Cabinet Secretary, Ministry of Labor, my sister and colleague, Honorable Florence Bore, representative of Honorable Lady Justice Martha Koome, Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court of Kenya, my very own PS, State Department for Gender, Madam Veronica Nduva. She leads Program Representative, Magdalene Mwoki, Country Director Terry D. Holmes, Development Partners present, Government Ministries and Departments Representatives, members of the civil society and media fraternity, Honorable Wanjala, Magistrate and the Secretary Rules Committee, Honorable Esther Passaris, my colleague, or rather former colleague, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today marks a significant milestone in our collaborative effort to combat domestic violence in Kenya. I stand before you as the Cabinet Secretary for Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, filled with pride and a deep sense of responsibility as we launch the Protection Against Domestic Violence rules. Domestic violence is a grave issue that affects individuals, families, and communities across our nation. It knows no boundaries of age, gender, socioeconomic status, or ethnicity. It leaves scars that are not always visible, tearing apart the fabric of our society and undermining the very essence of human dignity. Indeed, statistics from the Kenya Demographic and Health Survey of 2022 indicate that over 40% of women have experienced physical or sexual intimate partner violence in their lifetime. Moreover, the survey demonstrates that 43% of women and 35% of men believe that a man is justified to beat his wife. Among the rural population, 51% of women and 40% of men agreed that wife beating is justified. These are the worrying trends with us today. And the worst prison you can ever be in is the prison of mind. So we are meant to believe that this is what is supposed to happen. And as a survivor of gender-based violence, it's something that I do not want to narrate every time. Because if you want a wound to heal, you have to stop scratching it. And I hate to narrate my story, but I'm trying to imagine that if we had the law in place, and from my village in Takaungu, no one knew that I had a right when my rights were violated, that I had a right to report. Now the question that always crossed my mind, how many of Aisha Jumwa in the village who are there today looking at us, and from what our magistrate, Wanjala, has said, he has posed a question to us in this room, as the players, as the ambassadors, that how many are we here knows that these rules were gazetted in 2020, and the silence was very loud, very, very loud. So you can imagine the 50 million Kenyans out there looking at us, and we could not answer that question, meaning there's a serious gap that need to be filled. So if you're called a player, know that the team outside there is really watching and depending on you. So recognizing the urgency and seriousness of this matter, the government of Kenya has taken decisive steps to address domestic violence comprehensively. These rules we are launching here today are a testament to our commitment to protecting the rights and well-being of every Kenyan, irrespective of their circumstances. The protection against domestic violence rules are designed to provide a robust legal framework that strengthens the support and protection mechanisms available to survivors of domestic violence. These rules emphasize prevention, intervention, and holistic support, reflecting a multi-sectorial approach that involves collaboration between government agencies, civil society organizations, and the community at large. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to highlight some key aspects of these rules. Firstly, the rules establish clear guidelines for obtaining protection orders, ensuring that survivors have access to swift and effective legal remedies. These orders will prohibit the perpetrator from further acts of violence, safeguarding the safety and security of the survivor and any children involved. Secondly, the rules emphasize the importance of prevention and early intervention. They underline the need and responsibility by legal duty bearers to handle survivors with compassion, while also ensuring the perpetrators are held accountable for their actions. Lastly, these rules underscore the importance of public awareness and community engagement. We must challenge the social norms and attitudes that perpetuate domestic violence even as the rule of law takes effect. Through targeted awareness campaigns, education initiatives, and community dialogue, we aim to foster a society that embraces equality, respect, and nonviolence. Ladies and gentlemen, the launch of the Protection Against Domestic Violence Rule is just the beginning. Implementing these rules effectively requires the collective effort of all stakeholders, government, development partners, civil society, community leaders, and every Kenyan citizen. We must work together to create a society that rejects violence in all its forms and stand up for the rights and dignity of every individual. I urge each and every one of you to familiarize yourselves with these rules. Support survivors in their journey to healing and justice, and join us in advocating for a society free from domestic violence. Together, let's build a nation where every home is a sanctuary of love, respect, and peace. As I conclude, I wish to appreciate the accountability requirement for our courts to dispense swiftly and effective cases of gender-based violence. I commend our Chief Justice and President of the Supreme Court, who is well represented here today, for recently launching the first ever special court for handling sexual violence cases at Shanzu Law Court in Mombasa. The judiciary commitment to raise the bar on judiciary accountability for gender-based violence cases will serve to help preserve the dignity of survivors and enhance fair trial within the tenets of the Constitution. I am aware that all other government institutions in the gender-based violence referral pathways are putting in place significant reforms to ensure justice for survivors of domestic violence and GBV. We recognize the key role of the Rules Committee of the Judiciary and Gender and Media Initiative for the consistent support in the development of these rules among other stakeholders, and she leads Kenya for facilitating this launch. We appreciate the individual and institutional commitment to end gender-based violence. And I want, before I conclude my speech, I want to say that our work is far from over, and we must fill the gap. I want to echo the sentiments of the speakers who took the stage before me, and the requests that have been made. And I want to say that the beginning of justice to our survivors is at the police. And it is very sad that today a survivor is required to pay between 1,000 and 3,000 Kenya shillings to acquire a P3 form. It is very sad, and I want to say that because by requiring as a P3 form, as I have said, is the beginning, or it is the starting of the journey to justice to these survivors. So if they are asked to pay 1,000 to 3,000, depending on the police station where these survivors will report, is actually to re-victimize that person who is already victimized. And therefore, I would request that this service be rendered free of charge. There was an ask, or rather a request, to establish funded and operational gender-based violence police unit to complement the GBV codes and create a more supportive and inclusive environment for survivors by our girls and young women from She Leads. I want to say that the President of the Republic of Kenya recommitted on the 12th commitment of gender-based violence on the platform of GEF. And we already have 2 police units, a scientific name, a polycare unit that are already on operational. We have one here in Nairobi and the second one in Laikipia. And I want to commit here today to engage with my counterpart, the CS Interior, Honorable Kindiki, on full activation of the polycare program in this country. Let me also say that I'm sorry. Let me say that on the survivor fund, it is one of the 12 commitments, as I've said, on the platform of GEF platform, and the government, through the State Department for Gender, I can say that we have started to actualize, and our target is by 2026 to have the funds by the government through the State Department for Gender. But as we are talking here, as we are continuing to engage here today, is that we already have the fund which is in existence, but it's a bit I think it's a private fund called Jasiri fund, not Jami. Jami is for labor. You know what Jami? It's called Jasiri fund. In conclusion, and the key message here today is that the government of Kenya, under the leadership of His Excellency William Samoei Ruto, has zero tolerance to GBV. So, today, I want to declare total war on GBV. And as the Cabinet Secretary, Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action, I am on the forefront. Na munanijua? Munanifahamu? Vile Tundu vamesema, or rather my peers, hii kitu mimi mwenyewe imenisumbua, but nimeheal. Lakini nataka kuona Wakenya wakiwa huru and the society ikiwa huru, free from GBV. And with those few many remarks, naona kuna mambo hapa wanajipanga panga. Where? Here. So